Hello and welcome to Batflips and Nerds, the baseball podcast with a British twist. I am your host, Ben Carter, and I am joined by the incomparable Darius Austin. Darius, it's been a while for me at least. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Yeah, I guess it has been since I don't know, early season, was it that we did one, I think?
We were good to start the year, and then we've been particularly bad of late. Obviously, you and Rob got back on the mics a few weeks ago to talk about the trade deadline that came and went. But yeah, I think we're going to try and be a little bit better about recording a few more as the season comes to a close. Can't believe we're at the end of August already. So yeah, only one more month of regular season baseball to go. Well, I guess after next week. But it does feel like it was only a few weeks ago that we were talking about the start of the season and which teams we thought were going to do well and how wrong we were, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I suppose doing well is not a prerequisite for getting to playoffs this year, as we'll probably get onto. But
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I think we're going to go through some of the playoff races and where they stand. As I say, with about 5 weeks of the regular season left to go, it is getting towards squeaky bum time. If you do want to be playing October baseball now, I think we'll also look at some of the awards races. You've got a couple of tight ones, a couple of not so tight ones, but again, about a month left for players to make their case for the different awards in both leagues, and then maybe cover a few of the sort of fun, newsworthy moments, stories, performances of the last few weeks. Because baseball has been going on strong, even when we haven't been very good at talking about it. But I think we were going to kick off by going outside of the Major League Baseball sphere and instead looking further afield internationally to the Women's Baseball World Cup, which is taking place right now out in Taiwan. I believe the action was supposed to kick off today, but all of the games have been postponed due to significant weather issues in Taiwan. I think there's been a lot of flooding, heavy rain. So yeah, today has been a washout. I think they're playing games indoors tomorrow to try and get that underway. But GB are in action, which is very exciting. They're in a pool with Taiwan, Japan, Venezuela, and Cuba. So, I mean, four pretty strong baseballing nations. So I think they'll have their work cut out to get out of that pool, or indeed to get any results from those games. But we are, obviously delighted that they're taking part in that as European champions. It's something that they've earned and that they really have to fight to get out there for. Pay their own way. It is not the kind of program where things are given to those ladies on the team. And so we do want to make sure we spotlight them. And I say we, really, all of the work done spotlighting them is done by our colleague Gav, who has done a brilliant work tracking their progress for a long time now, but has written an especially good preview of the World Cup on batflipsandnerds.com. So you can go there, check out his work. As I say, the game's been washed out today, so you've not missed any action yet. And it's a really good preview in terms of what the format is of the World Cup. And then there is a player-by-player guide to every single athlete on the GB team. Some names you may already know from previous tournaments. Others are new on the scene. So yeah, well worth checking that out, reading through it and seeing how best to follow the tournament this year. Some of the games are at not so watchable times for us here in the UK, but some of them are watchable, and I believe you can stream them online at gametime.sport. So yeah, again, all the information is in Gav's article. I would strongly recommend that you go and check that out. He does do brilliant work for the site, doesn't he, Darius, in terms of keeping us updated on everything taking place on that side of the game.
he does, yeah. Gav's been doing terrific work on this beat, and indeed many beats. I think it's a real testament to him. The diversity of the content we've got on there isn't just MLB stuff, and he's got profiles of the players in there. He's got a story about how incredible it is that this team is even there. And yeah, some of these games, I think certainly later in the week, the Philippines game, I think, and the Taiwan game are both at much more UK-friendly times, assuming that the weather permits, or they play those indoors, whatever the situation is. So there'll be opportunities to check some of those out live as well.
Yeah. So I recommend you go and check that out. Obviously, best of luck to the GB women out there representing the country this week. Hopefully they can get some good results and if nothing else, play some great baseball and have an amazing experience. So yeah, good luck to them and go and check that article out. Let's dive from there, I guess, back to Major League Baseball and to the playoff races taking place across the league and lack of races in some areas, especially the American League, where no one seems to want this final wildcard spot. It looks like we're going to get 3 teams from the AL East into the playoffs unless Boston's amazing resurgence slows down. But that final wildcard spot is there for the taking. The AL West, no one wants to win that either. I don't know, yeah, if you have a strong view on which of these mediocre teams is most likely to crawl out of the gutter and get in there, but it's looking likely that we could have one, maybe even two teams getting into the playoffs on the AL side with a record around or even under 500, which a bit of an indictment of the quality of that league, but I guess makes it exciting to watch in these last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, well, it is an interesting question that we can come on to this. Interested in your thoughts on whether it matters that the teams are good or not from a consumer perspective. But yeah, you sort of, I think for a long time, it's just felt like it ought to be the Tigers, the Tigers and the team that's got the great run differential. It's quite stark, really. They're still at plus 77. Every other team in that race has got a negative run differential, and the Tigers look like they should be able to pull away, and they just haven't been playing well. And in fact, they've lost 4 in a row, and they seem to be falling further out of it than pulling themselves back into it. But there are several teams here that you'd think, oh, this team should be in the playoffs. You've got the World Series Blue Jays from last year. You've got the Mariners who, instead of building on last year's success, seems to have gone backwards. And not just the wild card, but the division is still very winnable in the West. The Astros are struggling along at 500 to the Rangers are barely in there with them there. So, it's all still to play for, and those teams could definitely still come back into it. But the dearth of quality is quite alarming in some of these cases. I think the Tigers bullpen is largely responsible for them having a great run differential, but still somehow blowing a bunch of games late. But yeah, you know what? It sort of feels like Cleveland are somehow going to end up in the playoffs again, aren't they? Because they always do, even though you'd look at the team and think there's not an awful lot here. They always find a way. But yeah, I can't say I have any confidence because I've just been thinking for months, the Tigers will come around. They've got all the good underlying stats, and now we're a month out, and it's kind of looking like it's not going to happen.
Yeah, their underperformance has been extraordinary, hasn't it? They're 12 games below their expected win-loss record, and look, Pythagorean records aren't always perfect, and it's rare that a team matches exactly what they are expected to do run differential-wise. But that would have them with an easy division lead if they are even close to that. So, but obviously they've also traded away their top 2 starting pitchers. They don't seem super interested in winning and being a playoff team this year. So I don't necessarily feel bad for them or for their fans, but yeah, it does seem like they would still be in with a good chance. Like you say, the Guardians are always a safe bet to be there and around it. I mean, almost every team really in the American League outside of the terrible Angels, Athletics, and Royals are in the race. Even the Royals have won 7 in a row. I mean, who knows if they get hot? That would take rather extraordinary getting hot. But it does seem
they do
like
7 more. You never know.
Then maybe, yeah. So yeah, it does seem like an extraordinary. I mean, the Mariners, like you said, that to me they are a team with the most talent amongst all these teams, but have just been dreadful this year and never really seem to be able to get clicking. But it does seem like that's a team that if Big Dumper wakes up and a few others, then maybe they can be a force come the playoffs if they do manage to sneak in. The Blue Jays, fresh off the World Series again, would be threatening if they got there. But bizarre that the quality has been so low. And I mean, even among the top teams, I guess the Rays, Yankees, Red Sox are having good seasons, but you wouldn't say it's like there are these monster teams that are beating up on everyone else, are there? It's just kind of like general mediocrity across the league. Which I mean, to your question, I don't think it necessarily matters. Like, is it a bit odd that you have a bunch of teams with pretty poor records competing for playoff spots? Yes, but that's a natural, I guess, consequence of having 3 wildcard teams. Now they're always going to end up with some teams getting in that aren't particularly good. And B, when it comes down to it, like for me, the drama of will they get in, won't they get in, and then the excitement of playoff baseball, you kind of throw the records out, don't you? They're all good baseball players and capable on their day of beating anyone. So I don't think it's like, oh, this is terrible for baseball that we have bad teams that might be getting into the playoffs. Like at the end of the day, I think, anyone can beat anyone. So I don't think it's not necessarily alarming in that way, but it is just a slight quirk that we have, 5 or 6 or 7 terrible teams all competing for 1 or 2 spots here. So we will see. Plenty of time for things to shake out.
Yeah, I mean, we might be sat here in 2 weeks lamenting the loss of the AL wildcard race because one of these teams has gone on a winning streak and sort of put the whole thing to bed. So,
well, that's it. Yeah, if you rip off 10 in a row now, then you're probably in. So let's see if a team's able to do it. On the National League side, slightly more traditional looking, I guess, playoff setup in that we have, some strong looking division leaders, and then your wildcard teams are more what you would expect them to be. There is still a decent race on for that final spot. At the moment, it's going the way of the Padres, but the Diamondbacks are hot on their heels, and I guess the Cardinals or Marlins could maybe play their way into it. More interesting maybe is the National League East race, which suddenly looks alive again. For a long time, the Braves had the best record in baseball and were kind of running away with it. But the Phillies have won 8 in a row now. They seem to be waking up. Do you see them hunting the Braves down and winning this division, or do you think the Braves hold them up? I think it's a 3-game lead they have right now.
Rob and I did talk about the disappointment of the Braves deadline, and I do still feel like that pitching is maybe going to come back to bite them a little bit here. The Phillies are playing very well. They've got Zach Wheeler back, seemingly fully functional, and the lineup is offensively very threatening. You can still question your defensive ability, but I kind of have a feeling that they will do it. Maybe that's a foolish thing because Atlanta have sort of been a team that you shouldn't really bet against very often the last few years. But the momentum seems to be with Philadelphia, and I think I like the team all around a bit better than Atlanta's at the moment. They've got the 2 aces at the top of that rotation. They've got real depth for the lineup. Yes, you can say what about the defense, and I won't argue with you, but we know that the dingers are good in the playoffs, and I think there's certainly a lot of those on the Philly team.
No, I do respect the way the Phillies have built their defense, which is a lot like the way I used to do it on MLB The Show, where it's like just squeeze however many bats we can into the lineup and we'll figure out who plays where later. But it seems to be working right now. Actually, I should have shouted out at the top of the show, but they are playing right now live on the BBC, actually, against the Cardinals. They're 3-0 down as of recording. But great to have bases covered back on the BBC on iPlayer with our friend Felix and Melanie and rest of the gang there. So that's great that we've got games, I think, every Sunday now through the end of the season, and I believe some playoff games too. Don't quote me on that. Make sure that if you are looking for somewhere to watch the games, don't have MLB TV, or even if you do, then it's worth watching those every Sunday on the BBC and giving those guys some support. Outside of the Phillies, the Brewers have got the best record in baseball right now, and there's been so much chat, I guess, about the Dodgers and how bad it is for baseball. And I know you and Rob covered off a little bit the whole, now they've got Scooble, and it kind of just makes a mockery of the whole idea of competitive balance. But as of right now, they don't have the best record in baseball or the best run differential in baseball. Are we under discussing the Brewers and how good they are? Or is this another year where the Brewers are dominant in the regular season, get to the playoffs and can't hit anything at all?
I think we've just reached the point where I'm not going to believe it until the Brewers show me in the playoffs, because we've seen them do this in the regular season so many times now, and the result has always been the same in the playoffs. Sadly, I would like to see them do better, but the way that they construct these lineups, I think I've said to Rob last time how low they were in terms of their power output. They are now last in the majors in home runs. And it is just kind of yes, they all can hit a bit, but when it gets there and, Christian Yelich's back is acting up, and what are we relying on here? Like, Jake Bowers is having a great season. Do you believe that Jake Bowers is going to be the playoff hero? Jackson Chourio, very good player, but has he quite reached the heights that everybody thought he might offensively? I don't think he has yet. It's a lot of very competent hitters, but I don't quite see the threat still. And we've seen that fall apart against the higher level pitching in the playoffs in previous years. We do say the playoffs are random, and somehow the same thing seems to happen to the Brewers every time, which is that they dominate the regular season and they don't score any runs in the playoffs. We've reached that point where I think they need to show me, they could win 110 games in the regular season, and I'd still say, well,
yeah, it's a little bit boy who cried wolf at this point with the Brewers, isn't it, in terms of that dominance and then it all falling apart. And there is, I forget who said it or where I read it, but hitting home runs, as much as we probably can overrate that as a stat for individual players and teams, that is quite an important thing when it comes to the playoffs, isn't it? There's quite a good studies that show that teams that hit a lot of home runs in the regular season tend to hit home runs in the playoffs, and that is quite a big part of winning playoff games if you can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And the Brewers are not good at that, and they have plenty of other talented players that can do things and score runs, but some of those ways they tend to generate runs seem to dry up in the playoffs when they come up against the best starting pitchers and bullpens that the sport has to offer. So you do worry for them. We'll see. I mean, I would love to see them go on a deeper run this year, and I think they deserve it with how good they've been for a sustained period of time. I would have loved to have seen them be a bit more bold at the trade deadline as well, and go out and find that extra bat or that extra arm that would really push them over the top. But we're going to talk about him a bit later, but obviously with Mizraowski on the mound, if they're able to manage his innings workload correctly, you'd have them favourites in the first game of pretty much any series, so maybe that will be the piece that helps them get there. Is there anyone else on either side that you think are worth calling out as far as getting to the playoffs, or indeed how likely they are to compete for the World Series once they do get there?
Yeah, I mean, the Padres are in an interesting spot for me right now because I think they've been underwhelming for much of the season, and now they seem to have finally got their big offensive pieces all going at the same time. And that's really made a big difference. For a long time we wondered, will Fernando Tatis ever hit a home run again? That seems to now be not such a problem. Jackson Merrill is hitting again. Manny Machado's obviously come around. I think we probably all should just believe in Manny Machado at some point. It's been pretty reliable over the course of his career and has gone through slumps. And the overall line doesn't look that good, but he has really picked things up again over the last few weeks or so. So yeah, the Padres are starting to look dangerous again, which I think is good for baseball. Probably a bit too late to make the Dodgers have to worry about their division lead, but they've got some good pieces. They've got Michael King obviously at the top of that rotation. They're trading for Myers at the deadline. They've got an absolutely lights out bullpen, which obviously does really matter in the playoffs. You don't want to see Adrian Marhone and Mason Miller sat in the bullpen when you're the opposing lineup trying to score some key runs in the playoffs. So that's a point in their favour. And yeah, we just, we've seen a lot of fun Padres teams over the last half decade or so, and I think baseball is better when the Padres are cooking and fun. Tatis being absolute swag the other night was kind of the epitome of that. So yeah, I've got my eye on them. I think if there was a team you could say, if these guys are in it, you could see them sort of outperforming their record on the season and making a run.
Yeah, they're a fun team to root for, aren't they, the Padres? They just have a lot of exciting players, and I feel like the atmosphere at Petco when the team's playing well is electric. And I'm probably going back several years now, but in my mind, they are also like kind of the Dodger killers, and that if any team is likely to bounce them in the first round or second round for that matter, it feels like maybe the Padres kind of have what it takes to get under their skin and disrupt them. So I hope they are able to turn this recent momentum into a decent playoff run. And yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about a few individual performances later, but Tatis, that one game against the Mets where he hit 2 home runs, and then, in my opinion, that maybe one of the greatest home run robberies of all time in terms of like a moment of not just the catch, which by itself was incredible, but the pose, the flip of the ball out of the glove, the hat coming off his head. I believe the kids call it aura, but that was significant aura from Tatis, wasn't it? It kind of was a throwback to back when he was kind of a rookie or his first couple of years in the league, where it felt like he was doing something insane nearly every week. Not that he's obviously still an incredible player, but that was very much like MVP Tatis, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. It was good to see him back. I think, it was a bit of a mystery, to be honest, as to why he wasn't hitting Fred Bear earlier in the season. And you always worry about players with things like that. We've got this with Paul Steens at the moment, where everyone's like, well, something must be wrong. He can't just have stopped being great. There must be something we don't know about. So it's great to see him back like that. And yeah, what a way to just absolutely suck the energy out of the crowd with in the most or way possible. Just make them think that it's a home run and then take it away from them. Yeah,
so good, wasn't it?
Only Tatis can be that cool, I think.
Yeah, the audible groan from the Mets crowd was brilliant, and yeah, their broadcast did a great job with it as well. Those guys in the booth always do. So yeah, that was a very fun moment that I think sort of broke out the confines of just diehard baseball fans. Let's, I guess, move on from some of the playoff races and talk about some of the awards races. We can start with maybe the most exciting one, or the one that I guess is most up for grabs, at least according to the bookies, which is the National League MVP award, which I think we had all penciled in as Shohei Ohtani's a month into the season. But obviously with him now focusing purely on hitting and not pitching, and also stealing stealing fewer bases than he has done previously. It has opened the door a little bit for someone to have a brilliant second half and compete for it. And boy, has Pete Crow Armstrong stepped up to the plate quite literally in his performances lately. And I feel like maybe now he is the favourite, or at least in my mind is the most deserving. He's got a pretty commanding lead in wins above replacement, partly because the models love his defence, and rightly so. If you watch him out there, you can see why. He would be rated highly on the defensive side, but also, yeah, he has showed massive improvement with the bat over the course of the season, striking out less, or at least, enough that he can let the bat play, hitting a lot more home runs. He's electric on the bases. It kind of feels like maybe it's his to lose now, even if the Cubs don't win that division, which they probably won't. It's almost his all-around game now is so good that in a year where Ohtani has still been brilliant with the bat, he maybe doesn't have the pitching and the steals with that to be able to match PCA. But where do you land on it?
Yeah, I think it's PCA's to lose at this point, and it is kind of a little bit easy to forget because of how last season ended. But we were sort of in this situation midway through last year where we had this, is PCA going to actually make a run for MVP? And then he obviously absolutely collapsed over the second half. I think by September he was getting benched against lefties because he was just completely clueless against them. And so, that question was not a question by the end of the season. Nobody had to decide and say, oh, I wonder who I should vote for. I've finally made it obvious that it was him. That doesn't appear to be a problem for PCA this season. He's hitting really well against lefties. He's actually hitting lefties better than righties this year, which is pretty incredible. So, and anything's possible. He does still strike out quite a bit. He's got a very, very aggressive approach. And I would have thought, I suppose, that at this point, if major league teams could figure out a way to exploit him more effectively, that they would have done so. I think he has matured and his selection has been a little bit better and he's taking more walks. And yeah, the strikeouts are manageable. They're on the high side, but with the offensive output he's given, it's absolutely fine. So there's always that possibility. We did see it last year where he was basically, he was not worth anything offensively. His defense is always going to be good. It's always going to be keep him in the lineup. But if he had a month like that, you could see it going back to Ohtani. But Ohtani not pitching, I think, just means that it's PCA's to lose, and the defense never slumps. Axiom is probably pretty true. He is the best center fielder in the league, and that is worth a lot. It would be worth a lot. Kevin Kiermaier was worth a monumental amount to the Rays without ever really being a particularly good hitter. PCA is like, peak Kevin Kiermaier out there, and he's also one of the best hitters in the league. So yeah, I think he just has to be fine probably the rest of the way to win this. Barring Ohtani getting 20 home runs in a month or something. But I also think that there's that people are constantly they're looking for someone else to vote for at this point, aren't they? I think there's going to be a bit of that.
I think there's an element of Ohtani fatigue at this point, isn't there? Just with he's been so good for so long, and I also think there's an element of every year he does something that's never been done in the history of baseball. So it's almost like you kind of have to give it to him because it's Tungsten Armo Doyle territory. But this year he's just been a really, really good hitter and an MVP level hitter. But I think we're so used to that being, and he did this, and he did that, and he did something else, that it's almost like, oh, if that's all he offers, then it's almost not worth giving it to him. So that's probably a bit unfair on Ohtani. And like you say, you wouldn't put it past him going out and hitting 15 home runs next month, and PCA's very streaky and he's in a hot streak right now, but he could easily go a few weeks where he gets a little bit more lost at the plate and it ends up being Ohtani's to lose again. So We will, excuse me, we will see. But it's exciting to have a pretty close race on that side, and credit to PCA for the adjustments he's made this year.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think, I mean, there was a period certainly early in the season before we got into Ms. Mania where it looked like Otani might be a legit Cy Young contender. And I think that then again, it would have been almost possibly irrelevant what PCA would have done if Otani had had 150 WRC plus and also, finished top 3 in Cy Young voting. It's still kind of a bit, well, what are you going to do? Like, he probably would have had 12 WAR or something if he'd have pitched all season at that the level that he was pitching. So yeah, it still would have been, I think, Otani's award at that point. You would have again had to say, well, he's done something else we haven't seen before, so better give it to him.
Nice of him to give someone else a chance for once, Shohei.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. On the American League side, it's, I guess, maybe more open in a way. I think it is probably going to be Jordan if he wins the Triple Crown, especially because people still like those counting stats. And we've been saying for how long now, oh God, if only he could put a whole healthy season together. And touch wood, he is putting together a whole healthy season, and he looks exactly as we thought he would, which is as the best hitter in baseball. So I think it's going to be his if he stays healthy and keeps hitting like this. And yeah, especially if he wraps up the Triple Crown. He's just had an unbelievable year with the bat, and obviously offers no value in the field or on the bases. But I think if you are as elite at the plate as he is and put together the kind of season he has, you probably deserve MVP. But Bobby Witt Jr. is just quietly, for a terrible Royals team, being Bobby Witt Jr. again, another brilliant season with the bat. Not quite the counting numbers, home run wise or RBI wise, that you'd maybe expect or that he's shown in recent years. But you know the Gold Glove is always going to be there, and he's had a great season. And I guess the other guy would maybe be Junior Caminero on the Rays. Again, a team overperforming expectations. He is currently tied for the league lead in home runs and has got some of the other counting numbers that the voters tend to like. So maybe there's a narrative that can be built around him, but it feels like it's probably Jordan, barring something that we don't want to happening over this last 5 weeks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels that way. And I hesitate to talk him up because we have obviously seen the struggles over the years for him to stay on the field. If you are building a narrative, I think he has the strongest narrative because the Astros are barely clinging onto this division lead, and you know where that lineup would be without him, and it's not in a good place. Ooh. Yeah, it would be pretty rough, I think. We don't think it's particularly close at BP. We have him well over a full win ahead of anybody, not just in the AL, but in the league. More, even though he is mostly DHing. Yeah, we have him by far the best hitter in baseball. It's not close. So yeah, it's been a pretty remarkable season, the kind of thing that we always hoped we would see from him, as you say, and have been robbed through the injuries. So it's fantastic to finally get a season like this. I mean, even what he's got now, even the 560 plate appearances, I think that's the thing that we often haven't seen out of Jordan, let alone a 650, 700 type year. Or we've often been left with 2-3 months of a season, and last year we obviously saw him struggle quite a bit at the plate even when he was on the field, I think, because of those injuries. So I feel bad for Bobby Witt, who is one of those. He's started to get the Zach Wheeler vibe of, is this guy just never going to win the award, even though he's one of the best every year because somebody else is always doing something slightly more remarkable. But yeah, the Royals are kind of bad. Witt doesn't have any particularly eye-popping numbers. He's just built it by being a good all-around guy. He's a fantastic defensive shortstop now. He hits for average. He gets on base. He's got some power, but not loads. He runs, but none of it is absolutely staggering. We're not saying, wow, look at Bobby Witt Jr. stealing 70 bases, or he's hitting 350, or, even that he's got 2 or 3 more than Jordan, which I think would make it a more interesting conversation. There are places where he has more and places where Jordan has more. But I think when it's that close and, you're certainly within the margin of error on defensive stats and that kind of thing, I think the tie is going to go to the guy who's absolutely mashing at the plate. I will shout out Dylan Dingler, who I think is probably slightly falling out of it now, but just a remarkable season for the Tigers. I don't know what it is these days with just catchers suddenly having random, unbelievable career years out of nowhere. Obviously, we're not quite getting the Cal Rally out of Dingler, but for him to
Close
become,
enough.
he's already a 5-ish win player this season, and that's pretty remarkable for a guy who I don't think anybody as a prospect thought he was going to be this level of player. And he's probably kept a largely lackluster Tigers team around in the race for longer than they would have been otherwise as well. So maybe there's a world in which they do go on that run over the last month and he gets some consideration. But I don't see anybody but Will them winning it the way things currently stand.
I remember, I forget which pod it was earlier this year, but we definitely did a pod, me, you, and Rob, where there was a tiebreaker that we needed for certain questions, and it was like guess the counting stats for certain players, and it was how many home runs did Dylan Dingler hit for the Tigers last year. And I think me and Rob said some pretty rude things about Dylan Dingler at the time, but underestimating his number of home runs, but I think also just generally disparaging his level of play. So I don't know if he heard that and took it very personally, but it's been an extraordinary year for a guy who, I think was seen by most as journeyman. Might be harsh, because I think he was never a bad player, and certainly defensively he'd always looked good from what we'd seen, but I don't think anyone necessarily saw this level of production from him, having only had, I guess, a year and a bit in the league. So credit to him for an extraordinary year behind the plate. But he may struggle to overturn Jordan. He's having the kind of year that you just can't really compete with. I do wonder with Bobby Witt whether, I think he'll have a year where like he does hit 350, or he does hit 40 home runs, or he does go 40, wherever it might be, where he does enough that he wins an MVP award, because he's just so consistently good that like the higher level ceiling will be so high that I think he'll do it. But I do wonder if we're going to start having like the Mike Trout conversation with him in a year or two's time, where it's like, is he wasting his career on the Royals kind of thing of like, have they made the playoffs whilst he's been there? They must have done once, right, in a wildcard round. But they certainly haven't been a good baseball team whilst he's been there. He's signed a massive long-term contract. I forget if there's opt-outs involved in that. But I wonder if we'll get to the point where...
But not until 2030.
Okay.
So he's got a few years left to think about that,
So you wonder if there comes a point where it's like, here's a guy putting up, like Mike Trout did, 10 wins every year, unbelievable on both sides of the ball, and his team cannot seem to build anything around him to get him into the playoffs, and whether we'll start having that same conversation of like, what a career that was sort of wasted. Will be interesting to see. But I don't think this is the year. He also missed a bit of time earlier this year, didn't he? So maybe that helps explain why some of his numbers are slightly suppressed. But unbelievable player, and I think probably just going to fall slightly short this year.
Yeah, I mean, he is 26, so we're not quite in Zach Wheeler territory.
We've got time,
We've got time.
But I'm just saying, I want to call my shot early. The arc is starting to look eerily similar. Although without, touch wood again, without hopefully the injury worries that Trout had that persisted for a while. We'll see. On the NL Cy Young side, it feels like that is a race that's pretty much run, even though his innings are being monitored a lot more cautiously now, as I guess the Brewers are planning to have him fully healthy for the playoffs when they get there. But Jacob Misiorowski has been, I think, the best pitcher in baseball by some margin, certainly in terms of just quality of stuff and results on the mound. The total numbers are a little bit lower because he isn't going as deep into games as he was earlier in the year, but he has been unbelievable this year, hasn't he? And getting into the kind of conversation around like best pure stuff since, Prime DeGrom, best pure stuff since Prime Verlander kind of conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's anybody else in the majors quite like him. It's appointment viewing, isn't it? You turn on expecting it's like ridiculous, and he kind of never lets you down, does he? You're always, your breath is taken away. Baseball can be a slightly frustrating game in some respects sometimes, and you sort of say, oh, look at this matchup, or I'm going to go watch so-and-so tonight, and they'll go 8-4, or, the pitcher will leave in the fourth inning because, the defense bobbled a couple of balls and the game got away from us saying. But I don't feel like it's really happened with him. He always, he throws a pitch, or, he'll have 15 punch outs or whatever it might be. And, he always does something pretty remarkable. It does feel like we're heading maybe a bit into the prize of, I think there was a Snell Verlander Cy Young year there. Verlander had maybe 50 more innings pitched than Snell or something. And Snell, had some ludicrous strikeout rate and great ERA. And Verlander had just thrown 220 innings of very good ERA without quite so much eye-popping peripherals. And I think more maybe did favour Verlander at the time. just because of the volume. The way that it is, I think, for Christopher Sanchez in at least a couple of the major metrics. Certainly we have Sanchez with slightly more walk than Liz, and I think BREF has had Sanchez ahead for a while as well now. I don't know if that's still the case. I'll have a look. But yeah, in terms of, when you watch the respective guys in the mound, who do you think is the best pitcher in baseball? I don't think anybody would have much doubt at the moment.
No, it's inarguable, isn't it? And like you say, we probably will get to a point where there will be guys that, maybe have got the volume that you can argue for overall value provided to their team. It's a little bit closer. But yeah, for how good they look when they're on the field, no one can really hold a candle to Mizraowski. It's not hard to explain his brilliance, is it, when you watch him in action? I guess while we're on the NL, you mentioned him earlier, but we probably were expecting to see Paul Skeens compete for this year, and he has not been bad by any stretch of the imagination, but there is clearly something going on here with him. I don't think he's actually missed any starts yet this year, but he's been pulled early quite a few times. The stuff has gone down quite visibly, just in terms of velocity anyway, where he was, in the range of routinely touching triple digits a year or two ago. He seems to be sitting more mid-90s now. Are you concerned? I guess two questions. One, are you concerned about the performance just in terms of has the stuff ticked down to where he now has gone from no doubt top 3 pitcher in baseball to just one of the top 20, no doubt aces, but not in that stratosphere? I guess part two, do you think there is something going on here injury-wise? That seems to be the speculation, right? Is that there's something arm health-wise that just isn't right, and the Pirates don't seem to want to say what it is, and Skeens doesn't seem to want to have to miss any time. But anytime you see a guy lose that much speed off his fastball and generally look like a different pitcher like he has, your mind goes to something's not right physically here. So I wonder, do you feel concerned about what this means for his long-term future?
I do a little bit, yes, because you mentioned the velocity. That's always been a good indicator. And sometimes these things can just be mechanical and not even particularly obviously mechanical. It might be a very small thing that he needs some time over the off season to fix. And at the moment, they don't have that time. They're not going to put him out and just let him sit, or go back to the complex and work on his delivery or whatever it might be. It could be something like that, and he'll come back just fine. That might be one explanation if they're all saying, well, he's fine. He's not got an injury. I would like to think that if he did have an injury, the Pirates wouldn't be letting him pitch through it. So I hope that they don't know that he's got an injury and they just let him go because he wants to. It's kind of their responsibility to take him out of the picture if that's the case. But I do have some concern because of that decline. Now, yes, he is still a very good player. I sort of, wonder. I mean, obviously, he hasn't had TJ, but I think about Steven Strasburg a lot in these situations where the guy comes up and very early on in his career he looks like best pitcher in baseball, and then something happened, and whether it's an injury, whether it's just a bit of aging, the stuff diminishes slightly, and we're still talking a near 30% strikeout rate here. The peripherals are all very good. If Paul Skeens was the 10th best pitcher in baseball over the next 5 years, I think a lot of people would be quite disappointed, which is a ridiculous thing to say. But we thought, it's Skeens and it's Skubal. Those are the guys now. This is the new Verlander and Kershaw or whatever it might be. And so I think there would be that if he has just lost, 3% of what he was when he came up, and he's not going to quite get that back. It's certainly not going to be a failure. He's still going to be one of the most valuable players in baseball. He'll still probably contend for Cy Youngs when things break his way. But maybe that's just he's lost a little tiny bit of his stuff, and that just from age, and he's not going to get that back. And maybe he's just Steven Strasburg instead of being Justin Verlander. There's small margins in these things. Steven Strasburg had a very good career.
An amazing
but people
career.
were always kind of like, Steven Strasburg, he didn't live up to the hype, did he? Wasn't
I think
quite...
it's a good comp because, you say, it does come down to expectations. And because Skeens arrived in the majors as an immediate top 5 pitcher, we were like, well, he's just going to be that for the rest of his career. He's whatever he was, 23 years old. That's just 15 years worth of dominance locked up now, given the 6 Cy Young awards and be done with it. And it's so rarely, if ever, works out that way. And I do think again, we don't know if he's injured or not, but a huge part of being a successful pitcher career-wise is health, right? And I feel for guys because that isn't necessarily something that they can control. And some guys just get unlucky, and we think all the time about, oh God, what would it have been like if we'd had a healthy DeGrom for his whole career? Even Blake Snell, guys who when they're healthy have been dominant but have just struggled to stay on the field. I do think we have to give credit to guys who are able to not just perform at a high level, but able to do it for 200 innings year in, year out, which is especially rare now. So again, like, I don't ding Skeens, if he is hurt for being hurt, but that is something that just has to factor in, doesn't it? And it was the same with Strasburg, where that was a slight frustration of like what could have been. He was still an amazing pitcher, but you kind of felt that he never quite hit the heights we were promised when he first came up. But we'll see. Hopefully, as you say, he finishes the season strong. Maybe it is something mechanical that he can figure out in the off-season and come back looking like same old Paul Skeens next year. We're obviously getting or inching closer to his impending free agency. So for him, from a financial perspective, it's pretty important that he looks as good as possible in the next year or two as that date comes round. So yeah, fingers crossed for him. I think it's amazing as well that I don't think he'll win the Cy Young this year, but that Chris Sale, who I thought his career was like over 5 years ago, continues to just be like one of the best pitchers in baseball again for the Braves. Who, his career is amazing as well, in that like he seems to have had two different ones, and both of them are like at Hall of Fame level almost. His career's been extraordinary, hasn't it, in terms of just the way that he's gone from being so injury prone you felt like he was done, to now like a workhorse who is as dominant as ever in his late 30s.
Yeah, and well, that stint in Boston, right? It seemed to go bad from a fit perspective at the end there. Things obviously weren't right behind the scenes, and that season, I think the 23 season, the ERA was over 4. He was 34. It just kind of looked like, hey, this is what, good pitchers look like when they get a bit older and they're slightly diminished. And they made that trade for Vaughn Grissom. And I think at the time, people were not necessarily criticizing the Red Sox for doing that. Grissom was a good prospect, and they could have been sat on a contract for a guy who was looking pretty finished. And then obviously it wasn't at all. It's gone to Atlanta and he's put up 3 consecutive years of a mid-2s ERA. He's won a Cy Young award. And I think he went from a guy from really going to be having Hall of Fame arguments about over in the next 5 to 10 years to a guy nobody's going to be able to argue about. He's just going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's a lock now, I think. He's cemented his legacy. So yeah, it's fantastic to see. And I also think fascinating for a guy who everybody always said was going to break, that he has stuck around for this long. And he's still going. I mean, we've seen a lot of other guys who you might have bet on to outlast him. He's here in his age 37 season and is still one of the best pitchers in baseball. And if it wasn't for the Miz and Sanchez, it probably would be winning the Cy Young this year.
Yeah, amazing that funky action that looks like it should rip his arm off almost every time he throws a pitch has managed to keep going for this long. So yeah, credit to him and whatever he's managed to do to stay on the field. I guess quickly, AL Cy Young, it seems like it's a 2-horse race between Dylan Cease of the Blue Jays and Cam Schlittler of the Yankees, who Cease slightly more strikeouts, better stuff, slightly better peripherals. Schlittler with the wins and the slightly better ERA right now, but both, very similar in terms of how their numbers look overall, and I guess also in terms of their importance to their respective teams. The Yankees obviously going to be in the playoffs, maybe division winners. The Blue Jays fighting for their lives, but they'd be in a lot more trouble without Cease, who's been brilliant, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. I think that it was one of the weirdest things about the Blue Jays, in that they went out and made these off-season moves. They've actually turned out pretty great.
Most of them have worked.
It's been great. Season's been great. If you'd have said, the Blue Jays have flopped this year, probably one of the main reasons you might have thought is, they've blown a load of money on free agents who didn't pan out. Not the case. They've done fantastically well with them. This is Cease's best season, I think. He's always had nasty stuff, and his problem has been the control, and then the walk rate is still a little on the high side. But yeah, Schlittler also coming out of relative obscurity, I would say. I don't think he was a prospect for sure, but I don't think when he came up, anybody was predicting him to be the ace of this Yankees staff, especially considering who else is on the Yankees staff. he looks unbelievable. The interesting three fastball approach, I think he's maybe executing it slightly more effectively than Lance Lynn obviously did. But it's quite a common approach in MLB these days for pitchers to just have three different fastballs. And he is fantastic to watch. I do wonder about the workload with him. I don't have any concerns about Cease because Cease is basically the rare lock these days for 32, 33 starts every year. There aren't many guys anymore who you think, oh yeah, I'll put that in the bank these days. But Cease has been one of them. And I do wonder about as we come into the final months this season. He obviously only made his debut last year. Pitched 14 games in the majors then, and he did pitch 1 leg innings. And just having a look to see how many he actually threw.
Got through about 160 total last year. It looks like
160.
No,
yeah. So
we're
we're
140.
Yeah. So we're looking at him coming up to about the same workload as he had last season. So I think this next month's going to be pretty telling, and obviously potentially beyond as well. We'll see where the Yankees are landing in the standings over the next month. But we could be easily looking at hitting 180, 190 innings before they get to the playoffs, and then the Yankees will obviously be hoping for him to throw another 20 to 30 for them over the course of a run. That could be challenging for somebody of that age and experience. Whereas since I think you've probably got a little bit more confidence in the arm. So I hope he holds up and pitches as well as he has done. But if you're going to look for a distinguishing factor over the last month of the season, I think that might do well.
Be that. I imagine in an ideal world, the Yankees maybe would have managed his workload a bit more and have him skip a couple of starts, but they've not really been in a position to be able to do that, have they? With Max Fried, who had been really, really durable for a long time, suffering a lot of injuries this year, with Cole obviously only returning halfway through the year, and with them not running away with the division by any stretch. I guess they haven't really had the luxury of being able to say, let's give Cam a start off and let's try and ease off. So yeah, I think they are going to, not run him into the ground. I'm sure they'll be careful with him, but they're going to need him to pitch important innings next month and in the playoffs. But well, yeah, how big has he been for them, and how big could he continue to be as a breakout guy? We can do the Rookie of the Year awards quickly as well. I think on the National League side, it seems JJ Weatherholt is the favourite here. He's had a brilliant year for the Cardinals. Carson Benj may be playing his way into it a little bit of late. He's swinging a hot bat recently and had that incredible 2 assists in a row inning the other day against the Padres. He's been brilliant out in the field as well. But I guess the story with the Mets being dreadful of a very impressive rookie, but that not necessarily impactful on the playoff race, probably works against him a little bit here. Do you see it as well a Holtz to lose as well?
Yeah, I think so. He's been up all season. Obviously, he's on the roster on opening day. He's again just been very good all around player. He looks like a good defensive infielder. He looks very mature at the plate. For a guy who is, I think, expected to be more polished as a experienced college back. But yeah, it's been very impressive. I think Benj is, you can get a lot of value out of a great centre fielder. I'm sure the Mets wish they hadn't played PCA. But they might have found another one, who's a good out there. He's not as good as PCA is, but he looks like he should be a fixture in that lineup, a rare bright spot for them this season. But I do think that the Weatherholt has just done a little bit too much. We'll see how the last month goes, of course, but at the moment, I think he's got a pretty convincing lead in WAR. So I think it would take a bit of a collapse, or for Bench to keep having multiple assist games, maybe to
more of those will help.
Lead.
Weatherholt is also just such a Cardinal too, isn't he? It's like I feel like I've been watching him for 10 years in a Cardinals jersey, doing what he's been doing this year. Like he just fits in immediately in every sense. I don't know if that's a compliment or not, JJ. But yeah, he's looked the part in his first season. On the AL side, I guess even less up for debate. McGonagall has been spectacular for Detroit. Kevin McGonagall, who has come into the league and immediately just been an extremely productive player. I think at shortstop for most of the year, which I don't believe he played tons of coming up to the majors as well. Was he more of a third? I don't know. Maybe he was shortstop in the minors too, but the fact that he's had to go in at a very tough position has been outstanding for them in a season where, they've maybe disappointed a little bit. It looks like they've got a cornerstone going forward for the franchise in him, possibly with room to grow as well. That one seems easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about these. Yeah, he did mostly play shortstop in the minors. There was some second base in there. He's obviously played some third for the Tigers this year. More of as a function of their roster construction, I think. He's one of those guys I think who, as he ages, um, maybe there was some concern as to whether he would stick at shortstop long term, and maybe he will end up being a second baseman. But a guy with a bat this good, you don't really care where he plays on your infield as long as he's playing. Yeah, extremely good contact rates, running the 380 OBP in the age 21 season as a rookie is pretty incredible. So yeah, I think it's definitely Kevin McCullough is not close.
We need to make sure that I assume someone else has already nicknamed him the Professor, but Harry Potter fans out there will surely be keen to make sure that one sticks.
What do you think that Venn diagram looks like? Tigers fans, Harry Potter.
I would imagine pretty big, actually. They're both pretty nerdy pursuits, aren't they? Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Their names are spelt differently, aren't they? But I mean, it seems like a pretty obvious crossover to make there.
Well, let us know if Ben has just stolen your nickname off. We can claim that one. Head out there with Toby Bowring.
With Bellringer. Cool. Well, that wraps up the awards. So yeah, a bit to play for on both sides into the final month. So some exciting things to look up for on an individual side. And yeah, I had down on as the last thing to discuss some of the sort of fun individual performances of late. We have mentioned a couple of these in passing already. Amazing that we had PCA had the game against the White Sox, a week ago now, where he hit a leadoff home run, I believe on the first pitch of the game, and then a walk-off home run, obviously on the last pitch of the game, to win it for them, which by itself, extraordinary game and an MVP moment, I suppose you could call it, as part of that homestand against the White Sox across town derby. And then literally yesterday, Randy Arozarena did the exact same thing for the Seattle Mariners, hitting a leadoff home run on the first pitch of the game, and then a walk-off home run on the final pitch of the game to win it for the Mariners, who very much need all the wins they can get. He also had a home run robbery in between too. So I think that when PCA did it, it was the first time since the 1950s that had happened. And now it's happened again a week later, which is very, very baseball, isn't it? That we have something that's never happened before, and then a week later we're like, oh, it happened again.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about baseball, that even though they play over 2,000 games a year, you still get all these, nobody's done this for 70 years or whatever, or sometimes ever. As we'll get onto Joshua Byers in a minute, but yeah, it's good fun fact, and it feels a bit, it's not Maguire Sosa, but Otani and Cranston do seem to keep having these nights where one of them will do something, hit a couple of homers, and then the other one goes, well, I can hit 2 homers too, bring it on. So I hope for a September of that, where they just keep going back and forth, competing.
It'd be fun. I think Otani's 2 homer game was against the Rockies, though, so you got to ding him some points for that, haven't you? Shouldn't really count towards the MVP argument.
That is, yeah.
Correct. We need to be careful with those. So yeah, that's been fun to see, and I'm sure we mentioned the Tatis game where he had the robbery and the 2 home runs. That was extraordinary to see as well. And then Joshua Baez, you mentioned he on debut against the Cubs at Wrigley had 3 home runs in his first 3 at bats, and I can't remember now I think that was the first time in MLB history, right, that a player had done that. So yeah, amazing that in all the years of baseball we've never had a rookie come up and hit 3 home runs in their first 3 at bats. So I think he did then after that go something like 0 for 16 with 12 Ks, which again is very baseball. Like, one day you're the greatest hitter to ever walk the planet doing something that's never been done before, and a week later you being told you need to go down to the minors, you bum, because you can't hit major league pitching. So both ends of the spectrum for Baez, but what a debut.
Yeah, when you think about how much baseball history there is, that nobody's ever done that in their first game. It's pretty incredible. I think it is a bit of an encapsulation of the type of prospect he is. I think he is, as far as I know, still leading the leads in home runs, because he was leading it when he left, and I don't think anybody's subsequently overtaken him. So just an absolute mammoth amount of power. But he was also striking out nearly 30% of the time. So you might get a lot more of this. I'm sure the Cards don't want to see another Melvin Gorman. I hope that Baez is a little bit better than that. But we have had that experience. It's his first couple of weeks in the big leagues of you might get some of these big dingers, but you might also get an awful lot of strikeouts.
Yeah, welcome back, Joey Gallo. Without the walks, though, so worse, Joey Gallo. I guess quickly, alongside buyers, we're getting into that time of year, aren't we, where it's sort of prospect call-up season, especially for the teams that don't have much to play for. I think Cade Anderson of the Mariners made his MLB debut last night, who I think was the top pitching prospect going into the evening, or who at least hadn't made their debut yet. So exciting to see him come up. I don't know how much you can share about what we can expect from Cade, whether it be the rest of this year, but also going forward. I mean, the Mariners pitching factory is unbelievable, isn't it? And yeah, maybe there are a few other guys that you have got your eye on as likely to get their feet wet in the next few weeks as teams start to look to the future.
Yeah, Anderson is, I think certainly before the season was considered among the best pitching prospects in the minors. I think he sort of very quickly put himself right on top of that with the absolutely unreal performance at AAA. He was sort of, very polished college pitcher and was expected to move fast. I think lots of people could expect to see him in the majors this year. But yeah, just an absurd performance in the minors this year. Has a 1.06 ERA at AA, which you don't see very often. 40% strikeout rate and 3.9% walk rate. So yeah,
those are good numbers.
A little bit too easy for him, I think. There's always been a bit of concern over the command piece of it, I think. So I guess we're about to find out whether it was just that the AA hitters couldn't cope with the stuff. We do see this quite often with the guys need challenging by the big leaguers who know where the strike zone is and can lay off a little bit easier. And sometimes things don't play out as well. But yeah, very exciting pitching prospect. Seattle also has Ryan Sloan in the minors, who's another one of the top 5 pitching prospects. I don't know whether they'll necessarily call him up this year, given that they've already got a packed rotation over there. But he is close. He's also pitching very well at AA, and we'll certainly see him next year. I don't know if we might see Walker Jenkins for the Twins. Twins are in one of those many AL teams in a weird wild card spot. And I think they've not really. I don't know that any of us knew where the Twins were going this season. I'm not sure the Twins knew where the Twins were going this season. And I'm not sure the Twins still know where they're going this season. So it might be the case that we don't see him, but he is also rating in the minors. I think he's got near 900 OPS at AAA. So he's had some shoulder issues earlier in the season, but I think he's healthy now, and the Twins could probably do with a bit of help. So we might see him. He's a top 10 prospect, I think, worst places. They have called up Caden Culpepper recently as well, who is one of their top prospects in top 50 overall guy. I know that Brewers fans keep yelling where we're going to see Jesus Varde. I don't think it would be very, very Brewers for them to bring it up. He is 19, but they did it with Jackson Churio pretty young, so you never know. But they obviously also have a glut of other infielders, so it seems unlikely that they would do that. I don't know if there's anybody else particularly high ranked that we would expect to see this year necessarily. I think those are probably the top guys. There's quite a few of these. I think we can expect to see in 2027 the Leo DeVries, Franco Arias of the world. But I think for this year that it's quite possible that Anderson is the highest profile call up we'll see. We've already seen a lot of their guys like Angel Denell is called up by the Guardians a couple of weeks ago. So I think most of the guys who are likely to come up are already here. Maybe I'd say Jenkins is the one that I would pick out at the moment if we're looking for top prospects who could still make an impact who aren't already in majors.
Might get a cup of coffee. Yeah, well, it's been an odd season for Twins fans, so maybe that'd be something for them to get excited about as the season winds down. Although, like you say, they are still one of those teams that potentially could steal a wild card spot. Well, I think that probably wraps us on recent action. I think, as I say, we'll come back and discuss as the playoff race sharpens next month, and see where we stand on some of those races. And same with the awards races. As mentioned at the top of the show, do check out the website, which is being consistently updated with great content, especially that piece on GB women's baseball team who are out competing in Taiwan. We are trying to keep active more so on the socials, so make sure you follow us there as well. And yeah, get in touch if you do want to contribute or have any thoughts on what we could chat about on the next show. And until then, we will see you soon. Goodbye.